Okay, hi everybody. We're going to talk about respiration today. So we're going to recap everything that we've looked at this lesson, the last lesson that we had, and we're going to apply what we found out about respiration in humans to respiration in plants so that you're ready for next lesson when we're going to look at respiration in other organisms, so some unusual organisms. So, first question, what is respiration? So, respiration is a chemical reaction that's taking place inside a cell, okay? You might be able to remember the equation that we already looked at, but the important thing to remember is that it is a chemical reaction, okay? It's nothing to do with breathing. Some people confuse respiration with the action of actually breathing in and out, and it is not anything to do with that at all. It is the chemical reaction inside a cell. So what we're doing is, we are taking glucose, or here it's just labelled as sugar, we're taking oxygen into our cell, and we talked briefly before about how those two molecules actually get to the cell, and the cell does its chemical reaction, and it creates energy, it creates carbon dioxide, and it creates water. Carbon dioxide and water are waste products, they're not useful. Energy, this is what we want, this is what we're trying to create. So let's look at the equation. Glucose plus oxygen makes energy, carbon dioxide, and water. So, if we're looking at the human, we need to think about the systems that are involved. Now, when you think about the systems involved, you need to think about three systems specifically. You need to think about the digestive system, about the circulatory system, and about the respiratory system. So the first thing we'll think about is the digestive system. Remember, from the digestive system, we're taking in glucose, okay? So in the small intestine, the glucose is absorbed. It is absorbed through the villi of the small intestine into your blood supply, okay? The blood is pushed by the pumping action of the heart, so it's now a part of your circulatory system, and the blood is going to carry that glucose all the way around your body until it gets to a cell that needs it. So obviously this glucose is going to go to every cell in the body. Every cell in the body requires glucose. But let's imagine just for now that we're going to talk about a cell that's in your arm. Okay, so we're going to have a zoomed in view of that cell. It looks like this. Okay, and now it has some glucose inside it. Now, the reaction can't happen with just glucose. We need some oxygen. So we're looking at the respiratory system. That oxygen is going to come, let's just change my pen colour. Let's go for blue. It's going to come into the mouth. It's going to be breathed in down the trachea and into your lungs. In the lungs, remember, it's going to meet those little alveoli. And from the alveoli, it will be absorbed into the bloodstream. Now, once it's in the bloodstream, same thing's going to happen. It goes to the heart. It gets pushed from the heart all around the body, in the circulatory system, and eventually some of that oxygen will make it to that cell in that arm. Okay? And we're going to add oxygen into that cell. It's going to be absorbed into the cell. Now that cell has all the raw materials that it needs, oxygen and glucose, so now it can carry out respiration. Okay, it's a happy cell. Okay, and it's going to create carbon dioxide, it's going to create water, and importantly, it's going to create energy. And that energy is going to be used for all of those Mrs. Gren processes that we've talked about before. So growth, repair, movement, reproduction, all of those different life processes, they need that energy from those cells. Now, okay, we need to think about plants. How does this plant respire? Well, this plant, it needs to get some oxygen. So how does it get oxygen? Well, the oxygen is going to diffuse into the leaves from the air, so it takes in oxygen. It also needs some glucose. Now, plants are special because they actually create their own carbohydrates, they create their own sugar, so that glucose is going to be already in the leaves. But there's glucose that is produced by the plant is going to end up in the cell. So it's got its oxygen, it has its glucose, and it's going to complete respiration. So that cell in that leaf is going to then give out some carbon dioxide, it's going to give out some water, and it's going to it's going to create some energy. So, plant's happy, it knows how to respire. Now we've mentioned the fact that plants don't just respire. Plants also do photosynthesis. So they photosynthesize, that's the process. And it's actually kind of the opposite of respiration. So in photosynthesis, this means the plant can make its own sugar. So what it's going to be doing, it's going to make its own carbohydrate. To do that, it needs to take in carbon dioxide. So this is how plants are really useful to us. They take in carbon dioxide, they take in light from the sun, which is already labelled here. Now it has to be UV radiation, so light that's coming from the sun, not like light that's coming from a light bulb. Okay. They use some water that's going to be taken in up the stem. And what they create is oxygen. So they're giving out oxygen this time, and they're going to create glucose. And that glucose is going to be in their leaves. Now, you will notice that some of these things that we've talked about are already used in respiration. So they're actually creating the oxygen, and they can create the glucose for respiration to happen. So that's the clever thing about plants. They are doing photosynthesis and respiration at the same time. So don't get confused and think plants only do photosynthesis and don't do respiration, because they need to do both. They may be making their own food, but they also need to make energy. So they turn that glucose into energy. It still needs to happen. Okay, so plants can do both photosynthesis and respiration. Humans can only do respiration. We're going to look at lots of other organisms and how they do respiration specifically. So what we want you to have a think about is, how does a jellyfish respire? Its cells need energy. Where do they get the oxygen from? Where do they get the glucose from? What about a cactus? How does it work in a cactus? They don't have leaves. How do they get oxygen? How do they get glucose? What about a beetle? How do they get the raw materials for respiration? How do they get rid of them? How do they get rid of that carbon dioxide? And over here, one organism we're going to look at in particular, yeast. So it's used to make alcohol, used to make bread rise. It is a single-celled organism. And we're going to be doing our own experiments with yeast, and we're going to be thinking about how a single-celled organism can do respiration all by itself. Okay, you need at least a paragraph of notes, at least 2 questions to bring back into class with you. You may want to include a diagram, that would be fantastic. I'm looking to give out some subject tokens for the best notes this week, and I look forward to seeing you all on Friday. Thank you.